Greetings and salutations, listener. It is I, Eric J. Chuckie, joined, as always, by the boy.
Hey.
This is the Two Nerds Podcast, and today we're talking about video games.
Video gamer! This is usually where he bridges into something else, but he's rubbing his eyes and looking confused right now.
They're so dry.
So,
if only I had a subscription to Audible. We're not sponsored by anything. We're barely
also,
sponsored.
That's an awful podcast.
We're barely sponsored by ourselves.
Oof. That's the realness. So, we are going to bring you a information about a good deal, though. I don't know if you can get any more, and if not, haha. We are doing this podcast on video games, partially because I had the opportunity to play a couple new video games recently, because Xbox Game Pass was $1, so we got it.
3 months.
So we got it, and as a result, I played 2 games I quite enjoyed that I'd played previous entries in the series, and I wanted to bring some information about them to you, listener. You also played some games recently.
Yes. I bought them with my own money.
Both of which you bought at full price.
No, I didn't buy Bloodborne at full price.
Or at the price offered for the game itself.
Yeah. Although the amount I technically paid for Bloodborne, I might as well have.
Hey.
But I could talk a long time about Bloodborne, and I don't want to right now. So let's start with...
So we've decided to do a podcast about it. Great timing on our part.
No, we've got 4 games to talk about. So let's start out with you. Let's talk about... I don't know, which one do you want to lead off with?
You know what? The one I have less to say about, Just Cause 4.
Okay.
I obviously have been playing Just Cause 4 on the Xbox Game Pass. I played the previous Just Cause I played Just Cause 3 as a PC game. And the transition from PC to Xbox was one I had to take a minute with, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, because you use mouse and keyboard, right?
Yeah, so I played Just Cause 4 as someone who is too stupid to work a gun. As opposed to a spinning sky, as opposed to someone who could use his little Regan launcher to launch himself up into the air, parachute across half the sky, pull out his sniper rifle and snipe a dude who was in a car. Now I have to use shotgun, get real close, bang bang. But the game is still pretty much what I play it for, which is not the story. Although the story is fun, you are playing Just Cause Man, Rico, I believe his name is. He goes to small island nations and deposes the people in charge of them. That hasn't changed. That's what you're doing in this game. The same as all the other games. With a ragtag group of people to help him and his ridiculous action hero superpowers that for once everyone in the universe recognizes are not normal. So people are like, no, it definitely has to be you who does this crazy thing. Wait, and Rico doesn't even question it, because the question would be, why? I mean, have you seen you? So he doesn't. He knows who he is. He's a ridiculous action movie superhero. So he's like, yeah, cool. At one point, a part of one of his plans is, okay, so what if we make a tornado here to get their tornado making machine to show up, and then I use my parachute to get to the top of the tornado and dive into the eye of the tornado and grab it, and then I'll do, I don't know, something. That was the actual line. I don't know, something.
It's very action hero-y.
And none of that seemed out of place. Yeah, that tracks. The game is really fun. The physics stuff you can do is really fun. They give you a lot of neat toys to play with, essentially, to cause havoc. The thing I wanted to talk most about is Just Cause in general. I've played 3 and 4, so maybe 1 and 2 weren't like this. Although in Just Cause 1, he dressed like a knockoff Johnny Cash, which is great. I know this because one of his old friends in Just Cause 4 roasted him for it, and I had to go Google to see if they were telling the truth.
That's
and
awesome.
Yes. It was, remember when you used to dress like a knockoff Johnny Cash? And I laughed, and then went and Googled it, and he totally did. It was hilarious. But in Just Cause 3 and 4, at least, they've really helped remove a problem that big, wide open, do mostly your own thing, and then occasionally do siloed off story missions, open worlds, have a problem with. And that's what has colloquially come to be known in this household as GTA syndrome, where you eventually just stop doing the story missions and do nothing but fuck around for a while, and then you eventually get bored because there's no reason to progress further in the game because you have all the tools you want to fuck around, and you get bored of fucking around, so you stop playing the game. They've managed to remove that as a problem by a couple different things. One, a bunch of the actual progressing the game missions are completely open world accessible. You just fly into them, because you fly everywhere. You fly into them, you do them, you leave. Which is super neat. The other thing they do is that instead of climbing a radio tower or a guard tower or a tower making tower to liberate zones on the map, which is a pretty common thing for this sort of genre of game, your Far Cry's, your Assassin's Creed sort of big open world, you're a rebellion, liberate parts of the map. Instead of climbing any towers, which, I mean, good job not making that the mechanic. Just Cause Man would be up those towers in 2 seconds flat. He has a Spider-Man rope. They make it so that you have to cause a certain amount of ridiculous bullshit destruction. Literally, I think they call it mayhem, to fill up a meter to get more reinforcements to liberate more zones. And that's neat as shit.
Yeah, it just plays directly into what you probably want to be doing in the game anyway.
Go fuck around for, like, there are points in the game where you can't do new story missions, like the big ones, the siloed off ones, until you open up more zones. And you can't open up more zones until you get more squads, and you can't get more squads until you cause enough mayhem. They literally give you mandated play breaks where you go and play the funnest part of the game, where you blow shit up and find the enemy and zip tie balloons and rocket boosters to their car to send their car spinning into space, and then you drop it on another car and they both blow up and you get points. It is completely over the top action. It is completely over the top bullshit, and I love it.
I'm glad. It's not really my kind of game. That's why I haven't played it. Same thing with Tomb Raider. What is my kind of game is Hypnospace Outlaw, which came out, I believe, in March and is available on Steam. I recommend you purchase it if you are interested in adventure games. It's a smaller game, so I would understand if you haven't heard of it, but it's basically a throwback internet browser where you are the dystopian cyber police. And you're like cracking down on people for using copyrighted images in their memes and cyberbullying and stuff like that. And then there's a broad adventure game and mystery to unravel through that. But a lot of the fun of the game is just poking around these retro style websites and getting to know the characters as an observer. Because you don't directly interact with but a couple of characters in the game. But there's a huge amount of NPCs whose websites you're looking at to see if they're doing cyber crimes. And the story just kind of unfolds, as you are browsing and as time passes. You were about to say something.
I'm listening interestedly. Because you're describing like a cross between the EU's Article 13, a GeoCities page, and Papers, Please.
Yeah. That's... And then there's like depth beyond that. Because to just call it that is not doing it the right service. It's got a little bit of the vibe of a... God, there was a game I compared it to after I first finished it. And now I can't remember what game that was off the top of my head.
Because I haven't played this either because it's not my kind of game. But I've seen him play it, and boy howdy, does it look like a time warp to like a slightly hyper-real version of what the web was like in the 90s.
If you ever popped in the DVD part of, the CD-ROM, part of Billy Idol's Cyberpunk album, this game looks like that.
Which is just beautiful.
One of the developers, principal developer, I'm not sure how the division of labor goes, the guy I follow on Twitter, Jay Tholen, excuse me if I'm mispronouncing that, he's the guy who did Dropsy, which was another fantastic game.
That definitely explains why you bought the game.
Oh, God, yeah. That's just why I heard about it in the first place. But even still, it really come on, retro wave stuff. Hello.
Oh yeah, I imagine you would have bought it anyway.
Yeah.
But, like it's a combination of a thing you would have been interested in anyway, and a person whose work you would have been interested in anyway. So it was a definite buy.
Why I paid full price for it, or it might have been like on a tiny sale, but it's why I was willing to take the gamble on it so hard. Because I believe in his ability as a storyteller and game designer. But it incorporates a lot of stuff from that era of like secret unlisted web pages and like the exact kind of drama that went on the internet during that time period. And I guess he watched a bunch of like cyberpunk, like cultural, like real world cultural, not like the fantasy stuff.
Yeah, your Neuromancer, your like Brazil.
Well, no, like actual people who were like into the cyberpunk subculture.
Oh, like interviews and stuff? I
Yeah.
thought you were talking about like the pop culture
No,
stuff.
I mean,
like
he might have
hackers.
done that too, but like he spent every day watching these old reports on this stuff. I guess a documentary series or something like that, just to make sure he was in the right mindset for writing this crazy crap. And it's it paid off. There's definitely a vibe there, and I like that there's more interactivity, so that it's not just a walking simulator style video game.
Where you just sort of watch the game unfold and click through menus.
I don't mind that. I liked Gone Home, for example. I liked the more slightly interactive Firewatch. I like that game a lot, actually. But I think Hypnospace Outlaw is even more interactive. It adds that extra layer of stuff to do while you're observing all this stuff happen over the period of time that happens in game. If you have any interest in text-based adventure games, like I'd say maybe not fully text-based because there's tons of graphics in this, but like old like Sierra or LucasArts adventure games, give it a shot, especially if you like retrowave crap. I'm not going to go too deep into it because experiencing the game is the point. Like I was talking with my girlfriend the other night about Final Fantasy, and she's like, okay, so what's it about? Specifically Final Fantasy IV. And I'm like, how the hell do you explain what the game is about when pretty much the entire point of an older RPG is to experience a story? Like, it's like trying to pitch a book where twists start happening in the first quarter of the story.
You pitch the initial premise.
Which, yeah, I did. And it feels so...
You play an evil dark knight on his quest.
Yeah, well, yeah. A perhaps regretting things, evil dark knight. Dun, dun, dun. But it seems so small in comparison to the scope. It would be...
but that's what would have pulled you in the first place if you were looking at it blind. So that's what you give the prospective audience, because that way the twist feels natural.
Sure, definitely. But it
like
is...
I would not tell people the end of several Stephen King novels.
I was actually going to say it would be like suggesting someone read Dark Tower and giving them the opening line.
Yeah, ooh. Yeah, which to
That's
be fair,
what I got.
to be absolutely fair, the opening line of Dark Tower is one, killer, and two, what drew me into the book. Like, that's what caused me to keep reading.
It is a good opening line. But, so you've also been playing another game that's part of a series that you appreciate.
I have. It's a series I quite like. It is both. I played all three current entries at this point, although I haven't finished the third one. And I, two of which I got via Xbox Game Pass, or Games with Gold, one of the two.
Yeah.
The second one I paid for because I didn't want to wait.
It was
and
on a pretty good
ironically,
sale.
it's the one I like the least. And that's the new Tomb Raider reboots. I know they're not the most popular with everyone. Specifically, they're not amazingly popular with classic Tomb Raider fans. Thankfully, I'm not really a classic Tomb Raider fan. So... I played some Tomb Raider back in the day. Not a lot, some. I wouldn't call myself a fan of the character pre the reboots, but the reboot really, really interested me when it came out. I just didn't ever get around to playing it until I got it via Game Pass, I think it was.
I was actually pretty interested in it too. Unfortunately, I didn't end up liking the gameplay as much, but...
Whereas I really did. It's right in there with, like... It's a stealth action game. And I really like that. It had some crafting elements, had some light survival elements, very light. And it was really fun. And more than that, I liked the game. It's someone using a bow. And listener, we've talked about how much I like bow people in fiction. And two, it was a really compelling story. I really liked the story of that first Tomb Raider game. Henceforth, I'm only referring to the reboot series. I'm not going to be talking about the classic ones unless I specifically mention it. Just so I don't have to say the first reboot or whatever dumb phrase. I really like the first one. I really like the premise of, this isn't Lara Croft as you know her. This isn't the cool, calm, collected triple murder badass. This is someone way over her head. So, and how she deals with it. I really, really like that premise. I thought that was really cool. Getting to play someone like that is not amazingly common in video games.
I thought it was really smart, too. I do have more to say about this than Just Cause. Because I do appreciate it from a distance. This is one of those games that I haven't minded watching you play much because I'm interested. I just, like I said, the gameplay, I'd rather err on the side of Metal Gear than this. But I was never all that interested in Lara Croft, the super spy, the girl James Bond / Indiana Jones. Heavy accent on the James Bond, it seemed like it at a lot of turns. But the grittier elements, the survivalist stuff, it really intrigued me. Like, I really thought that was such a smart decision to reboot the character in that direction. To make the tombs she raids feel scary and dangerous and not just like a movie starring The Rock.
I like movies starring The Rock.
Sure.
There's a
Just Cause 4.
I like the original Tomb Raider movie quite a bit with Angelina Jolie. And that's what that was. But I really like the idea of the reboot. I like the premise. This person's way in over her head and she's... Sorry, the cat's doing something terribly adorable. And she has to deal with that. And then through actual, like, carried through, and this is not unknown in this area of video games, but I find it really, really satisfying. Carried through character development through all three games, she has transformed from the person who I vividly remember the scene where she killed her first deer in the first game right after you make your first bow. And she's crying as she's, like, gutting it to eat so she doesn't starve. And I remember that, and then I get to a scene in the third game where she has risen like a horror movie monster out of a burning lake and weaponless approaches this big buff army dude who is crawling back away from her terrified because Lara Croft is here and she's come for me. And it's entirely, completely believable because of the character development the character has gone through. She is believable as this unstoppable juggernaut of titanic force of personality who's just a savant at murder. And ruthless in the extreme because I saw the transformation from, girl fresh out of college with big dreams in her eyes, first to eat cute bunny rabbits in order not to starve to death, and, like, kill dudes, or they will, like, double murder her, to this. I really liked being able to see that whole transformation. And it feels really good for me as the player who's played all three of these games. I feel a real sense of accomplishment because I played Lara through all these games. It is a great way of really selling the transformation. And one of the things I really like about this Tomb Raider game in specific is because it's not... Lara's story isn't a hero's journey. It's an anti-hero's journey. Like in Shadow of the Tomb Raider, which if you've seen the promo stuff, this isn't a spoiler. Basically everything is her fault and everything she does keeps making everything worse. And she's sad about it, but she doesn't stop. There's no part of the question that is, All right, but then why don't you just stop if you're making everything worse? She's not going to stop. The audience knows she's not, more than just because there's no video game. It's just if she stops, it's because Laura, the character who has been sold at this point up to now, she's not going to stop. She's going to win. She has this group of people she hates because of the things they want and the things they've done and the things they've done to her, and so she's not going to stop until they're put down. One way or another. It doesn't matter if she's making things worse. Not really. She'll be sad about it. She'll cry about it. But that's not going to stop her from killing them all. And I really, really like that character development. Because she's not the hero. She's not the good guy. The other people aren't good guys either. But I like that.
I like it too. Like, I haven't been watching this one as much. I've mostly been out of the house when he's been playing. But... yeah, I just like good writing. It can be that easy. I just like a well-written character or a well-written story, and she really sounds like she's had that go down for her. So
I like the third game more than the second one also because the second one got a little Uncharted-y for me. It was big set pieces that were felt kind of semi-on rails. And the third one might have a bunch of those too. I just haven't felt them as much. I might be the cow going through the chute, but I'm not banging against the rails now, you know?
What a meaty way to put that. I like it.
I think it's time.
I'd like to delay just a little bit. I've played a couple of other games recently. The girlfriend and I finished Super Mario 3 without using a warp whistle the other day. Speaking of which, I don't know if you guys probably do. I didn't until the other day. If you buy the Nintendo Online service, you get a shit ton of NES games for free.
Just on your Switch, just, so you can play NES games, classic NES games that you love, from, whenever you want.
We were going to do it classic style with an old NES, but we couldn't keep it working.
And Nintendo had your back.
Geez, did they ever? I happened to have gotten that...
service for... you mostly ended up getting it for Smash Brothers maps, right?
Yeah, and Mii's. But I was like, well, I'm sure I can buy Mario 3. No, I don't need to. I sort of already did. And 2, and 1, and Zelda, and a bunch of different games that I'm really excited to try out. Mario 3 was as good as ever. In retrospect, I noticed a couple of design flaws with it. Because it's been since
someone's gonna come after Mario's wig. Brave boy.
No, I'm not. It wasn't like terrible. Just some of the controls weren't as tight as I remember them being, and that's probably just
emulation.
Yeah, emulation basically. I don't remember what emulator they're using, but they are using an emulator.
That's a natural problem with emulation. The difference between like semi-analog like button presses and the digital emulation of them.
I had the same problem on the NES controller though, so it can't be that much of a difference.
Partially maybe it's that you're old now.
Could be that my reflexes aren't quite as tight, but and there was just a couple of other little like, why does this work in this way sort of thing. But I also noticed a couple things that I remembered incorrectly. Like you actually, if you play through the actual whole game, you get a bunch of Tanuki suits. You only get Karibo's shoe like once, but the Tanuki suits pop up all the time. I was kind of happy about that. You get a couple Hammer Brothers suits and Frog suits and a couple places to use them too. When I was a kid, because I used the warp whistle and skipped around everywhere, I was like, I don't get to enjoy the best parts of the game, the cool Kigurumis I get to put on. I sure as hell didn't call them that back then, but whatever.
Outfits. You call them outfits. You filthy gaijin.
Costumes, suits. I think I called them suits. I don't know that kid. He was an asshole.
Yeah, we all were.
Aren't we all still? But that was fun. And I played Spin Tires Mud Runner, which is a game about driving a truck through the mud while hauling big things. And at its core, I don't think I would enjoy this game much. However, if you put on a soundtrack and you role play as a truck driving man...
He put on a soundtrack of Trucking Country, I think was the name.
Country songs about trucks specifically. It became really fun. And I don't know, actually the graphics are really impressive and stuff.
I'm going to be honest, I watched you play this game. You liked this game because you were playing it with someone else.
That's a lot of it too, actually. When you play a game with somebody else, like...
This was like Until Dawn. This is a game that is fun with others.
I liked Until Dawn alone.
Oh, no, fucking no. The one where you played Jason, excuse me.
Friday the 13th. Yeah.
I was thinking of the other one, the knockoff one, where you're not Jason, not Friday the 13th.
Right. Dead by Daylight.
Dead by Daylight, that's right.
Which, ironically, I think they have Jason at this point, because they also have every other horror movie villain and Ash. So...
But yeah, it's a game that's fun with others, not by itself.
I don't know how much I could play it by itself, but it was impressive for what it was. It had that very farming simulator energy to it, where like, oh, this could be interesting. But yes, I think I've eaten enough time now so that I won't drone on about Bloodborne more than anybody cares to hear.
So tell us about Bloodborne, White.
I'm going to try to approach this from... I went through some shit with this game. And I'm not going to go into all the stories because I've either told them already or they're not interesting enough to retell. Suffice it to say, I went through some shit to get this game. And having played and beaten all the Dark Souls games, I was really excited to play Bloodborne, which was a Dark Souls game, but in a cool Lovecraftian horror sense. I was initially very disappointed with it. We have graduated to only mildly disappointed with it. There's a slight inclination to check out some of the other weapons that I couldn't use in a replay, but like, I don't like this game as much as Dark Souls 2, and I have a hard time playing Dark Souls 2 past Haid Tower. Replaying Dark Souls 2 past Haid Tower. I love the setting. I love a lot of the storytelling, and I will say that I think it does tutorials better than Dark Souls 1 did.
In that it does them.
I mean, Dark Souls 1 had sort of a suggestion of tutorials. But there's a lot about it that really frustrates me, and I think it's partially my quote-unquote fault, because this is the missing link between Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3. But I already played and beat Dark Souls 3, and it's a vastly superior game. In every way.
So you've already. How do you go back to the farm once you've seen Paris?
Yeah, and seen Paris in its excellence 3 times within 1 year.
And then they ask you to go back to like. All right, I know a bunch
Marseille?
of towns. I know a bunch of towns in France, but I also know some French people. And if I get which one is the Hoboken of France wrong, I'm gonna hear about it later. So we're just gonna say Hoboken instead. We're gonna drag my country. It's fine.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that really frustrates me with the game. The combat is one of them. The lack of purchasables is another. How little my level ups feel like they matter until I've got a lot of them under my belt is another thing. There was a point where I lost like 100,000 echoes. And I was like, meh. Like I had that initial of, ugh, I lost my souls reaction. And I was kind of pissed. But then I thought about it and I was like, what would you even buy with those, buddy? I guess I could get a point of vitality. Roughly 12 hit points. I guess I'm alright.
Roughly the amount of hit points someone could knock off with 2 pebbles.
Yeah. There's a lot of really great environments. The graphics are very good. There are a couple of textures that are questionable.
I've also played Bloodborne. Not nearly as much, only like an hour, because then I stopped. I'm going to dispute that. Maybe later they get good, but the first couple zones are samey bullshit.
Well, and that's a lot of the problem is that, and a lot of why I kept playing. When I started playing Dark Souls, there's a video on this channel somewhere about me going, Dark Souls is bupkis, and I've left it up because I have no shame, I guess. I've been proven wrong, and I'm not going to deny it, I think is the actual answer. But Dark Souls took me a long time to get into, and I suffered through it until about Anor Londo. At which point I was hooked, and then I saw that Anor Londo sky and went, oh. And that's why I pushed on Bloodborne, because I wanted that moment. Like I played Dark Souls 2, and Dark Souls 3 all the way through. I did not have the struggle issues that I had with Dark Souls 1 with either of those games. And one of them was Dark Souls 2. Playing Bloodborne was like teleporting myself back to the first time I played Dark Souls 1 and going, what the fuck is this shit?
I stopped playing Bloodborne when I didn't realize where the hell I was supposed to go. Couldn't figure out where the hell I was supposed to go. I literally asked White where I was supposed to go, and he said, have you been to the area with the 2 gates? And I looked him dead in the eye and said, that could be any literal section of screen from the time I turned on the game to now, and I wouldn't be able to tell you. So I stopped playing.
The first area is possibly the worst choice for a first area because of how dense and convoluted it is. Once you get into zones that open up a little wider, it calms down. Once I hit the forest, I started enjoying myself. The forest was the first zone in that game that I really liked. But aside from that, the game still has mechanics that frustrate the hell out of me.
It's like you started Dark Souls 1 in Blight Town, but everything was somehow wetter and grosser.
It was like you started Dark Souls 1 in Blight Town with walls everywhere.
Yes, you couldn't just say YOLO and try and jump it.
Yeah. The connectivity doesn't matter in most cases is another big thing.
Yeah, when it's like, oh, cool, I found a way back to the... I never need to go back there, so who gives a fuck?
Well, and like, that would... So the reason the connectivity in Dark Souls 1 was really good is because you couldn't teleport until, like, really close to the end of the game. In Bloodborne, you can teleport from the start. And it's even an assy version of teleportation where you have to go back to the Hunter's Dream, and then you can teleport somewhere. Unlike Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3.
Where they just went, you're at the fire, what fire do you want to go to?
Yeah. Like, I beat Dark Beast Parl and opened the doors to fucking whatever that town is. I'm not even going to try. And was like, cool, that connects to there. Well, I finished that zone, so gotta teleport back now. If I didn't have teleportation from the beginning, fantastic. Glad this interconnects. Oh, how cool. I can get back to an easy lantern from here, blah, 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 blah. But no, there's no point. It's shitty Dark Souls 3. Is all it is.
But, I mean, shitty Dark Souls 3 can still be fun. Because you seem to be having a good time with it now.
After the forest, I felt a lot better about a lot of things. I still think it's got Dark Souls 2 problem with most of its bosses. Not in that everything that you ever see is a boss. Up to and including the pigs and Jula. But more that, like, getting to a boss is ridiculously hard. And then you fight the boss, and the boss is a cakewalk. After, like, the first 3 bosses in that game, after fucking Bloodstarved Beast, it's easy. There's secret optional bosses that have given me a bit of a headache. But usually it's getting from point A to point B.
You know, I'm not, and this is not me flexing, I'm bad at video games. I had a bit of that in Dark Souls 3.
With you, specifically your playstyle, I have no doubt.
Where it was, you know, well, getting to the boss could be a pain. But then the bosses got sort of easy apart from, like, a couple real hard points, like Pontiff Sullivan. Like, Pontiff Sullivan, the giant king, whatever his name was, Yorm or some shit. Mm-hmm. You know, that's honestly a guess because I wanted a giant-y name. And that was only hard because I was forced to use some bullshit gimmick sword.
I believe you had a tough time with the Watchers.
The Abyss Watchers? Yeah, that was the last, like, real hard boss.
That's accurate. You had a good fight against Aldrich.
Yes.
That fight can go really pear-shaped. You had a good one.
I won the first time.
Jesus was in your favor.
Clean as a whistle.
And your skill complemented that instead of giving it a chance to fuck you over.
But, so it's not, but like, you had that issue with Bloodborne, where it's just, I mean, the bosses kind of got easy after a while.
And you know what? There's like
you know what? I see that, because I haven't watched you play a bunch of it, because watching you play Bloodborne frustrates me in a way that watching you play Dark Souls never did. But I never really see you fighting bosses, whereas when I watch you play Dark Souls, usually once every 2 or 3 days, I would come in from work or come in from like mowing the lawn or whatever it was I was doing, and you'd be fighting the same boss that you were when I left several hours beforehand, and I will go, is that still? And you'd be like, yes.
Dark Souls 3 had some really fun, challenging bosses, and that's another issue of Bloodborne, is that the bosses, as cool looking as they are,
Simplistic.
they're really simple. I beat most of them on the first try. I don't want that out of a boss. Like, I fought Ebrietas, and I was excited that she was... I don't know if she's Hispanic. It's just what I see the word and how I pronounce it.
Whatever, move on.
Sobriety. I was happy because she made me fight her a couple times before I finished her. But like most of the other bosses, I beat Amygdala first try.
Yeah, I legitimately can't remember. I remember you fighting Tuberface. That's
Ebrietas.
I caught the one time you fought Big Grey Werewolf.
Yeah, Vicar Amelia. She was easy. I didn't even use her gimmick. That's another thing I found out is I got to the midway point and I started watching Vadi Vidya's Bloodborne stuff that I had already beaten. And he's like, oh, you can use this delightful technique to really stick it to Father Gascoigne, where you use the music box and prepare to cry. I didn't know you could do that. I didn't know you could stun the guy. I just beat him. I mean, it took me a while. He's one of the harder bosses, definitely. And he was an interesting fight. I liked him. But I don't know if he had a trick. I don't know you could fucking stop Vicar Amelia from healing.
How do you do that?
You guys like little items you get. You throw them at her, she can't heal.
Oh.
I don't know that shit. I just fucking kicked her ass. I just beat her wolfy face in.
He really did. It was sad to watch, honestly.
Amygdala was so sad because it was just... She wasn't even as hard as Vort. I just kind of waddled over to her side and hit her in the hip. And she was like, please stop. And I went, never.
Good old Vort of the Boreal Valley.
Like, and that is not me flexing because I fought the Twin Princes for hours. And, like, not only just because they were in my way and really hard, but then after that, again and again and again, helping people because I loved that fight. There's not a fight in Bloodborne that I loved. They're cool bosses.
Cool looking, that is.
Yeah, but I think maybe my favorite boss so far visually anyway, might have been Murgo's Wet Nurse. You didn't see that one. Stormy did. It's cool as hell. There's a lot of cool depth to it, but I'm getting into the ramble mode. I didn't want to get too far. It's a flawed game, and especially having played Dark Souls 3, I can see those flaws. I really like the Chalice dungeons. I think that was a cool idea. Execution was a little off. I'm sad they didn't do it in Dark Souls 3 because it would have been a very cool idea if they had been able to execute it a little bit better. For the benefit of the listener and the boy, Chalice dungeons are little, somewhat randomized dungeons you go through.
Oh,
they have little bosses.
Neat.
You can do them with multiplayers. It's basically the Bloodborne version of a WoW dungeon or raid. How fucking cool is that?
That's very cool.
There's some shit around them that makes them kind of like, ugh. But yeah, how neat is that? Wouldn't that have been great for Dark Souls? Just give me more shit to do in this game I love. I don't love Bloodborne that much. But I haven't finished it yet. I've done everything in the main game except for the last boss fights. And,
which I imagine that's just because you can't go back after.
Right, yeah, it Dark Souls. I'm in the process of the DLC right now. I haven't made it very far at all. I have an entire umbilical cord to eat. Don't you worry, listener. So that'll get done. But yeah, that's what we've been doing with our time. Not seeing superhero movies.
Yeah. Instead, we've been playing video games because in this world of nerddom, there's no end of useless bullshit to waste your time on.
And it is a absolutely beautiful thing. In fact, I think I'm going to go play more video games just now.
Well, in that case, everything's better when nerds talk about it. Fuck it!